AskReddit by Call Me Amaya. What's the most disturbing thing you learned about someone on the first date? Well, a Tinder date just smoked a little heroin off some aluminum foil in front of me, so probably that. This was the first comment I saw when I clicked. That's a high bar right out of the gate. We went to a concert in the park. On the walk back to her house, she just casually pointed to the house and said, "That's where I buy my meth." This is amazing and I will 100% be using this on my next date to test his sense of humor. Someone told me she really wanted a Jaguar when she was in high school, but her dad bought her a Prius instead. So she crashed it on purpose. And then he bought her another Prius. And she crashed it again. I guess he learned his lesson afterwards and bought her a Jaguar. Had a roommate once who would crash his Audi every year so his parents would buy him a new one. Knew him 3 years, 3 different new Audis. He told me he was a gambling addict, and when I asked if he had tried to stop, he said he didn't get much out of his meetings at Gamblers Anonymous because the other people there were low stakes grandmas playing bingo and he was more of a high roller, so he couldn't relate. Kinda makes sense about not relating, but strange to bring up on a first date. I guess at least he's honest. Gal and I had a good night and things were progressing, and right at the last second she tells me she had a felony conviction because in her capacity as a social worker for at-risk youth she'd had sex with one of said at-risk youths. At least you didn't have to find out later. Dude took me to a park bench and then regaled me with a story of how he's about to go on trial for raping his ex on that park bench. And how screw what the CCTV says, I didn't do it. He gave off the vibes that he totally did it. He was trying to prove this CCTV go round that he can bring a girl to that park bench and not rape her. She was French. She taught English. In England. She hated England and the English. She didn't read books. She didn't like films or music. Oh, and she thought disabled people couldn't feel pain. A fact she shouted at me in a packed restaurant after I told her she was wrong. She thought the date went well and wanted to go on another one. Disabled people couldn't feel pain. What? How does someone come to this conclusion? Especially because being disabled is such a vague term that could mean 10,000 different things. Like, yeah, some forms of paralysis make you unable to feel pain in the affected area, but being deaf wouldn't affect pain in any way. She was not only a Scientologist, but hella deep into it. Did she know where Shelly is? Said casually after hookup, "I have to get up early tomorrow, because I have a court date for hitting my ex-wife." I was speaking to a guy on Bumble who told me after a few days that the police had just been round about him harassing his ex. Which is obviously just ridiculous, because all he did was contact her friends and family when she blocked him, which he wouldn't have to do if she hadn't blocked him. Yeah, bye. We went to a brunch spot and then talked in his car. He started trying to kiss and touch me. He kept saying, "Stop trying to play hard to get. I know you want it," as he was holding my wrists together since I was trying to get his hands from trailing up my thigh. Played the fake phone call thing and blocked him on everything. To this day he thinks I enjoyed it and just didn't want to look like a whore on the first date. Also, it was barely past noon, like, sir, get a grip. Deleted. I went on a single date with a woman. I learned she dated, separately, both my brother and cousin. Coincidentally. Your genetic line appeals to her. Not me, but my friend matched with a woman online, and after they talked for a few days she said she has to tell him something and it might be a deal breaker. He googled her name immediately and turns out that she served time because she was a teacher and slept with a student. The mugshot was unmistakable. So then he talked to her and she brought up something else entirely that wasn't that bad, like she lived with her parents or something. As a former teacher, this is so gross. Like, they are children. They act like children. You're there to help teach them how to be functioning adults. The teachers that sleep with students have serious mental issues. He told me with a full physical reenactment about how he'd gotten into a fist fight with a guy and kept beating him bloody until his then girlfriend got scared and begged him to stop. He also told a couple racist jokes and told me he was in political legal trouble with the government for being involved in protests. I didn't ask for details. I had poor cell phone service in the area, but managed to get an Uber to pick me up from the street corner as we were walking alone in the dark. Literally felt the need to escape, but he forced a kiss before I could get in the car and leave. This guy was also a professor at a local university. This one guy 41M just casually drops that he has 5 kids on the other side of the country. When I say, oh, that must be really hard, you must miss them so much, he responds with, yeah, but you know, things happen and they are older and have their own lives now. So I'm thinking his kids are 20 or so. Nope. The youngest was 5 and his oldest was 14 and he just up and left them and didn't seem to care. Class act. The 14-year-old is about retirement age and the 5-year-old is applying to Yale in between naps and bluey gigs. Time sure flies by. Met a guy. He was cute and nice. Spent some time on a bench in the park after having some coffee at a nice cafe. We talk for 30 minutes, share hobbies, talk about stuff and really enjoy ourselves. Guess what? At some point the dude asks if he can show me something. And it was a list of every girl he ever had sex with. Asked if I wanna be added to that list. WTF weirdo. Like the dude literally had names and all. Besides showing on the first date, it was creepy as fuck, even if he showed me after a month. Obviously, I left, still gives me a weird feeling talking about it. AHK reminds me of when I was cleaning out my mom's ex-husband's apartment after he passed away. I found a handwritten note with a long list of names, under the heading women I've seen naked since Jay mistakenly left me in 2002. Guy told me my wrists are too small, he could hold them both with one hand and I won't be able to escape. How nice of him to warn you ahead of time before you were alone together. Removed. I have some very distinct memories of kindergarten and how we all went around pulling and touching our genitals, but our own ones. Don't think the idea of putting your mouth on them really existed in our heads, and that makes me wonder what one or more of those kids had experienced. A regular at a bar I went to was clearly into me, we had similar interests, so eventually we went home after last call one night. He told me the next day he was homeless and was at the bar so much because he did odd jobs in exchange for drinks. He was persistent in asking what I was doing that day, and I said I was seeing some friends to watch the Eagles game. He found out where I was and proceeded to ask if we were in a relationship. I said no. And he sent me a bunch of long-winded messages about how he thought he loved me, but I'm clearly just like the other girls and a bitch who broke his heart. I learned this months later, but apparently he was trying to get all the other regulars to talk to me for him after I blocked him. He truly didn't understand how creepy and fixated he came off. I literally had nightmares about him showing up to my apartment, since he knew where I lived. Sounds like you dodged a homosexual. That's so disturbing though. Did you have to ditch going to that bar or did he finally cool off? Guy told me when he was young he tortured a cat to see what would happen. He was 16. Ideally what happens is prison. She told me her brother was in jail for throwing his GF out of moving car. Only to follow up later with staring into blank space and telling me she couldn't tell me what was there because they would kill me. Most memorable night ever. OMG. Guy went in for the kiss and grabbed me really hard around the neck. Thing is, I don't actually think that was his thing. I think he was just very inexperienced and just thought he'd try and pretend he was all sexy and confident and just got it wrong. Guy I went on a date with had just moved back from Canada. He said to me, what's the hardest thing you've ever been through, and I told him something I can't remember. Then he tells me he and his friend went to a bush tooth and his friend went to pee and never came back. He was never found. I went home and googled it and found a podcast episode about it, and the sister of the guy who went missing said his best friend was supposed to be questioned by the police but fled to Canada. Both his ex-wife and child were missing. It was a first date and just the most awkward moment. She told me that she got addicted to heroin, got busted with her friend for having a shitload of smack in her car, got her kids taken away from her and went to prison for a year, and every night she had to listen as a CO raped the woman in the cell next to hers. That's my serious answer. My comical answer is that the same girl admitted that she had sex with Tunlock. She went out in the city and he was at the same club and she thought, fuck it, he's a celebrity, why not? Lol. I asked how was it and she said I dunno, all I remember is that he was fat. What a wild thing she was. That he wanted to have a daughter so he could raise her to please a man. Kicked him to the curb in the middle of the date. Oh my god, WTFFFFF.